to the Web3 Prof Podcast.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I'm here with Scott Sibley, who is the founder of Shamory. Thanks for being with me here today, Scott.
Happy to be here.
Scott, I'd love to just get things started by just hearing a little bit about your Bitcoin story. How did you get into Bitcoin and when did that happen?
Yeah, so my story, kind of that class of 2017, 2018 time period when that bull run up to 20,000 started catching people's attention. So I came in at the tail end there, like a lot of people, towards the top. And at the beginning, I was kind of observing. So I can't really say I bought the top, which was nice, but I did kind of go down that altcoin rabbit hole for a few months. But I like to say I was lucky enough to recognize probably within 2 or 3 months that was a waste of time, for lack of better words, and really started focusing on Bitcoin and what it was over that kind of 2018 time period. And, since then, it's been a joy. It's kind of crazy that we're coming up on, what are we in 25? So 8-9 years or so, kind of going down that rabbit hole and learning about Bitcoin in the process. But yeah, that 2017, 2018 run up was kind of what caught my attention initially.
Yeah, I'm in the same situation. I bought at the top, maybe 5 days before the top, but I pretty much nailed the top on that one. I remember that was like just around Christmas of 2017, and it was exciting. But I'm sure, like you, I had no idea what I was doing. Did you know anything before you started buying?
Not much, other than you just start learning little by little. Definitely didn't know the difference between Bitcoin and everything else, which is kind of that first trap that people fall into, and then. Just really started, back then, as there was a few books, that are out there. So you kind of start looking out there for what types of books you could read. The podcasts were starting to pop up. So there's a handful of those that were out there, but really, finding information wasn't nearly as easy as it was today. But kind of going that self-education journey. I like to say that I've probably learned more going through that pathway than I have in my entire life about a topic. And so kind of leading that. And like people saying, when something's your passion, you're interested in, it doesn't feel like learning. It's more of an interest in going down it, and it's more of an exciting type thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I feel like that's quite relatable, I think, to a lot of people. And like you said, the class of 2017 was a big group of people just like me and you. Did you buy other cryptocurrencies, or was it only Bitcoin?
No, I definitely bought a handful of other ones to start with, just because, I feel, it's 17,000, it's 18,000, it's 20,000. It's too expensive, kind of the standard feeling that most people have when they see it, not understanding right away. So yeah, I went down that path but like I said, luckily it only lasted a few months. So it wasn't kind of a long journey, and took a U-turn back to Bitcoin full time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I remember maybe 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I was at in Vancouver here, what was called the Bitcoin Block Party. And I remember going to a booth, and I remember seeing someone selling a stuffy called Shamory. And I've got little kids. And so I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. I've never seen a Bitcoin stuffy before, and I bought it. But I didn't know anything about Shamory at the time. And it's been cool to kind of see you guys develop your brand. And it's been cool to see the stuffy float around my house and be played with for the few years now, passing from my 12-year-old, who's now my 12-year-old, to the 10-year-old, and to the 8-year-old who still plays with it all the time. But tell us about Shamory, what you guys do, and a little bit about the brand.
No, I appreciate the kind words. And you're probably, if I'm guessing, probably bought that from Dale from QuickBit.
That is right. I did buy it from Dale.
Yep. So Dale's an awesome Canadian Bitcoiner who has, to this day, he still has some of our product that are up there. So if you're in Canada and at an event and you see Dale in his booth, you might find some of our stuff there. So shout out to him and his team. But yeah, so Shamory kind of came about kind of as that next phase in my Bitcoin journey, along with my wife. So like I said, 2017, 2018, kind of started learning about it. And then towards that tail end of 2018, kind of realized, there's not anything out there to make learning about Bitcoin fun for kids and families. And at the time, we were going through the process of thinking about starting a family ourselves. So it was kind of topical in that sense. And so I just kind of went down once again, kind of passion project pathway to think about what could be created to make that happen. So our first product, which took about a year to create, is a game called Shamory. And so it's a matching card game. So the name comes from SHA, S-H-A, which is the cryptographic algorithm. SHA-256 is the algorithm that's used in Bitcoin mining. And then Mori is the end of the word memory. So it plays similar to the game of memory. So that's where the name Shamory comes from. And so it went through about a year process of creating that game, doing artwork. Like you were mentioning, you have a stuffy. So everything we do is using these little monster characters. The stuff you have is Satoshi. And so going through that process and eventually launching in early 2020, the actual game was kind of that aha moment where we started putting it out there. Like I said, it was a passion project for mostly myself, and my wife was supportive of it. And then, people like yourselves that are in the Bitcoin community and they have kids and they're like, hey, this is awesome. We want to be able to talk and teach our kids about Bitcoin and financial literacy and that sort of topic. So we kind of saw that need in the space and have, grown since then we have our game still out there. We have 3 different books. We have the plushie, and then we have kind of, those auxiliary fun projects or products to use our characters with. So whether it's clothes or socks or bucket hats or pins, but kind of letting those characters live in various ways.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I found like with my kids and them learning about Bitcoin, it's been so important to have these types of assets around to get them involved and learn, whether it's games or the stuffy, or for my kids, selling lemonade and accepting Bitcoin has been a big part of that, and using their profits to buy small amounts of Bitcoin for themselves has been critical. Can you kind of tie this together? So tell us about a little bit more specifics about the game and why you thought the game was important to help kids learn about Bitcoin. And then also, why do you think kids need to learn about Bitcoin?
Yeah. So I guess the first part was one, recognizing that kids need to learn about, financial literacy. There's something that's not taught very well in the, call it, traditional school system in general. And so that was kind of step one. And then recognizing that, Bitcoin, as these kids grow up, is going to be part of their life, whether they want it to be or not, as we keep moving forward. And so that's kind of the baseline that it came from. And then the idea for a game really came from the fact that, obviously Bitcoin is heavily digital. What you can hold a hardware wallet, that sort of thing, but everything else is digital. And so wanting to create a physical product for the kids to be able to touch and feel, to let them know that they're learning about something real. And also because, for family or your father, having, whether it's books or games or whatever it may be, having that physical touch and that family time to bring you together is very different than, sitting in front of a screen and creating an app version or something like that. And so that's why everything we've built thus far has been physical and nature. And so the game itself, to your question about how it's played, so like I mentioned, it's similar to the game of memory, but it teaches about Bitcoin mining. And so from a high level, you have 2 different sets of cards, the target cards and the nonce cards. And in Bitcoin mining, if you're boiling it down to the very, very basics from a very high level, if the target and the nonce are going to match up, that's how the next block is mined. There's obviously lots more that goes into all that, but that's the basic of it. And so we have characters, like I mentioned. So the kids are flipping over the cards, and as they find those matches, that's mining the next block. The player who finds that match earns a Bitcoin reward because they've mined that block. And so the goal of the game is to have the blockchain mined from the Genesis block up to the block out of 10. If that's done, the player with the most rewards is the winner. But along the way, they're rolling a dice as all this is happening. An attack card can get played. If that attack chain ever gets longer than the blockchain, 51% attack, game's over for everybody.
Oh,
and so that's showing how mining is, yes, it's competitive. Everybody wants to mine those blocks, but it's also collaborative, and that everybody's working together to protect the network, protect that chain. And so if you're playing with your friends or your family and you're almost made it up there and the chain gets attacked, well, everybody loses. So towards the end of the game, maybe you start helping everybody out. You realize that, hey, winning, 6 rewards, when I could get the 7th, is not going to be as much if they all disappear because we attack it. So we start helping each other out potentially. So that's some of the feedback we've heard over and over again from families where they play once maybe, and that hyper competitive son or daughter, they all lose. But then they realize, oh, we can help each other here, and then we all can be winners. And so kind of those sort of life lessons can get brought into the game as well.
And what ages is it for?
We like to say 4 and up. So there's a difficulty adjustment that gets worked into, so you can make it harder or easier as you play as well. But we started playing with our daughter when actually slightly younger. So we really just started playing just matching. So not even worrying about the blockchain, just kind of play a matching game.
Yeah.
So you can go that basic if you wanted to, but kind of 4 or 5 on up through adults. We actually have drinking game instructions on the website. So if you really want to spice it up, you can do that with your friends at night.
Why do you think play is so important, especially like gamified learning, what you're expressing here is such a powerful way for kids to learn about Bitcoin or to spark curiosity in Bitcoin, or maybe even more foundationally, money?
Yeah, I think it, when it comes to, play and learning, whether it's about Bitcoin or money or anything, it's fun, for most kids. So kind of going back to when you asked about my Bitcoin story and how I started learning, well, that wasn't necessarily gamification, but it was fun because I was choosing to do it. If the game is fun enough, the kids are choosing to do that. Whether they know what they're learning right away or not really doesn't matter, but they're going through that, and they're going to start going through that process and realize that learning can be fun, no matter the topic I choose. If it's something that is put in front of me that's enjoyable, and they go down that. So I think that's step one, is kind of not make it feel like learning, make it feel like something they want to do, they're choosing to do it, and go along the way, and hopefully that can then spur different questions that can come out of that experience.
Oh, that's pretty cool. What was the thing that you were most surprised about when you saw maybe kids playing the game for the first time, or maybe your kids' friends play the game, and you think, wow, that was not what I expected to kind of be highlighted maybe about their learning process?
I think the first thing that was surprising was just that it worked. So we were creating the game in the midst of the COVID chaos. So it was, and at that time, being where we were located, we didn't know any other Bitcoiners in the area to really test it out. So this was just learning about Bitcoin mining on your own, putting it out there and hoping that, the knowledge that you gained made sense. So I guess the first surprise was that when people who knew about it said, "Oh yeah, this makes sense." So that was kind of breath number one. But then secondarily, the next surprise actually didn't come from the families. It was from people who were high up in the actual mining space. So call it, CEOs of public mining companies who we'd meet at different events, and they'd see the game being played, and they'd say, this is the most simple and elegant way we've ever seen mining explained. We want to use this for something for like new employees or investors to come in.
Right.
And so having people who are, actually Bitcoin mining, they know the ins and outs, recognize the simplicity of something as simple and fun as a game. It was probably the biggest surprise on that side of things.
Have you found that adults are able to, maybe they're using it for their employees in these companies. Are adults playing this game and learning from it?
They definitely are learning. I think it's more, whether it's the book, the game, or really the books too. So, especially since the first 2 books that we have are more that toddler audience, so they're not reading yet. So you need the adult to read to them. And what we find, and we've seen it ourselves firsthand and family members, where, the child, the 2-year-old says, Grandma, I want you to read Goodnight Bitcoin to me. The grandma's not a Bitcoiner, but he or she, if it's the grandfather, they have to sit down and they read the book, and they're hearing words like Satoshi, HAL, mining blocks. So they're being exposed to these concepts from, once again, a very high and simple level. But, it's letting them kind of open their eyes to this new side of things, and maybe feel comfortable asking questions after the fact.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So you talked a little bit about how the game breaks down mining. What about other core concepts like scarcity or security? Do you implement these kind of ideas into your books or into your game as well? And how do you break some of these things down?
Yeah, so the game is focused on the mining side of things. The books, so we have 3 different books. So the first was, is Goodnight Bitcoin. So for those parents that are out there or remembering as your kids, you're all familiar with Goodnight Moon, Goodnight Gorilla, Goodnight Baseball. There's so many of them out there. So that's where the inspiration came from. And that story really is the story of Satoshi creating Bitcoin. So it goes through the process of the first blocks being mined. There only being 21 million. So once again, these are written at the 1-page rhyming style. So it's touching on some of those topics, but kind of just broad strokes over that side of things.
Yeah.
The second book is If You Give a Monster a Bitcoin. So once again, playing off of If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. And that book really touches more on the good that Bitcoin can do in the world as it's spread and goes throughout there. So it's kind of more of a story on that aspect. And then the last story, which actually is one that we didn't author ourselves. So for those that know, actually another Canadian, Tomer Storlight, had written a book years ago titled Satoshi Nakamoto and His Bitcoin Invention that he never published. And so a few years ago, he approached us and asked if we'd be interested in partnering and taking his story and using our characters and going through having us publish it under the Shamory brand, which we did for him. And so that story is a little more high level, kind of ages 5 to 12. And it touches more on those concepts in a deeper level. So that'd be the one that really starts diving a little deeper. So it was nice that we, our first two books, more that toddler infant audience, and then being able to couple it with the third book at that next level up as the kids are growing up.
But it's still written as like a playful storybook for the older kids.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. I feel like I need to get more into the Shamory brand now, learning about a bit more about the game and the books as well, because this is exactly the kind of thing I want for my kids. And so I think that's really cool. I think that's so powerful because, in my opinion, as an educator, I teach university, and I think one of the real challenges we have in this space is a bit of the toxicity around Bitcoin, kind of the arrogance that comes along with this, where it's almost like, well, if you don't know, we're not going to really tell you because you should know. How could you be pro fiat? Obviously Bitcoin's the better way, and kind of actually maybe hand holding and helping people along in the process, because it's a very difficult concept and it's ingrained into us to believe other things. And so I love understanding brands like this that are really trying to take this really complicated concept and breaking it down simply, even for children to understand, and for them to be raised with the knowledge is just absolutely life-changing for their future, even though they don't know it.
Yep, no, for sure. And the nice thing is, at least in my opinion, they're, even if they don't know it yet, especially the kids that are being born today, they're going to grow up in it, and they're going to pick it up, like it's native to them. It's the adults that are harder to rewire.
Oh, it is so true. Do parents or educators ever share, or do you ever hear that they're learning along with their kids? You kind of had this kind of like example about grandparents, maybe. Is this something that you're seeing the benefit of your products bring to a family? Like, for example, in our family, I know a reasonable amount about Bitcoin. My wife knows less, but I could see like her reading these stories or playing the games with our kids, and kind of all of us grow together. Yeah,
we've definitely heard stories like that, and kind of that stereotypical setup where maybe, like you said, the husband knows more, the wife knows less, or maybe none. It's kind of just always been supportive, and then the kids are obviously going along for the ride. So we hear stories like that. We've heard stories, actually, one of the fun ones that happened very, very early on. We heard from a family that gotten our game, and they were playing it, and there was a grandfather that was playing with the kids, and within, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks after playing, the grandfather, so this was back in, say, 2020, 2021, sometime around there, had gone out and he purchased an ASIC and started mining himself just from being simulated and being interested from, sitting down and playing the game with his grandkids one day. And so that story always sticks in the back of our heads, of the kind of the fun ones that were out there that you don't expect.
Do you see gamified learning being helpful for adults as well? And is there Bitcoin gamified learning for adults?
Good question. I think gamified learning can be good for any age, no matter what the topic is. So I think that, even things like, Duolingo and the success of those sorts of products, I think proves that point. Gamified learning for adults, there's the companies out there that are focusing it. I'm thinking like a Learning Glass. So like, Seb and Daz have that. That's not so much gamified per se. What else? There's another company that, blanking on their name. I've talked to them a few times over the years. They have an app, and they go through some of the process. If it comes into my head, I'll bring it back up. But they had something along those lines. I'm sure there'll be more of it. I think a lot of it, gamified learning for adults is, even companies like a Fold or a Lolly, they're gamified in the sense that you're earning rewards through your purchases, but you're not necessarily learning those are your Bitcoiners already, most likely,
Right.
that are coming in there. Although, there are times that people might be, getting people to sign up just for fun, and
Yeah.
that starts their way. So I do see them as a form of it. So who knows what else will pop up out there?
I mean, I feel like maybe this is an opportunity for you guys. It seems like there's a hole in the marketplace.
There definitely is. Who knows where we'll go?
So, what role do you think early education in Bitcoin plays for the next generation of Bitcoiners versus those of us who have kind of relied on adult curiosity? How important is that early fundamental education in finance, in economics, and in Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think whether it's about Bitcoin or just financial literacy, it's vital. I mean, there's not a kid out there that's not they're going to grow up where financial literacy isn't going to be important to them. And so, whether you're homeschooling or you're going to a public school or a private school, making sure that your kids have that knowledge, not only about Bitcoin, but about, credit cards and debt and, mortgages and how do you buy a car? How do you buy a house? All those, do you use banks? Do you not use banks? Making sure that they're comfortable with it and understand it is vital. And being able to, when it comes to Bitcoin, let them use it. So we, for those of people listening that have seen us at conferences, we have two daughters, the oldest of which is 6. And since she was 3, she's come along with us to conferences, and not only helps us, sell our products, but to get her involved, she sells little bracelets and keychains that she makes. And when somebody asks, how do I pay you? She has a little plastic card there that has a QR code that goes to her Lightning wallet, and people scan it. And so those little things for her, Bitcoin payments that's just money. It's just another way. She knows what sats are. She obviously thinks, if she gets 1,000 sats, that's an extreme amount of money because it's 1,000 of something. But
right,
those little things go a long way in kind of bringing that next level of understanding out and comfort. To her, Bitcoin is just something she's going to grow up with. Same with our youngest is a little, she's a year and a half. So she's not there yet, but same thing, as the kids start growing up, as they start using it, like you mentioned, selling lemonade. If they have they're taking Bitcoin payments or they're converting it afterwards, whatever, that comfort is how they can start to know that this is just another thing that's part of my life.
I like the bracelets example as well. There was a Bitcoin conference in Vancouver in the summer called Learning Bitcoin, and my kids had been invited to sell lemonade, but the convention center's got a lot of regulations around business licenses and food safe and all this kind of stuff. And so we certainly were going to pull that together. So we brainstormed, and they came up with the idea of making Bitcoin themed bracelets. So they made bracelets with little slogans like stack and sats and Satoshi and these kind of little words and meme words as well. And it was great because they were able to accept Lightning. 100% of the people at the conference paid with Lightning, and they were able to build up a little treasury for their little business. And it was cool to see because it really does teach them hands-on, like how easy it is, how simple it is, how quickly the transactions happen, because that's always a big thing. And it was a great learning experience for them. That hands-on experience is just so incredibly valuable.
Oh, for sure.
Where do you see Shamory going in the next few years? What, any new games, partnerships, I don't know, anything that you guys think that you're going to be creating in the next few years?
Yeah, not sure. So, we're always thinking about kind of that next thing. Probably, continue to keep it physical. That kind of has been our motto to date, and kind of see where it all goes. As you know, we recently launched a podcast. It sounds crazy. It's almost been 6 months. But the Bitcoin for Family show. And so had fun kind of putting that out there. So kind of it's a way to kind of talk to other families in the space and talk about, Bitcoin life as families. Really, it's about very little about Bitcoin, but more about just letting other families learn from each other. And so we'll see where it all evolves. If nothing else, if people will be, we plan on being at the big conference in Vegas again next year. So it's a while down the road, but if anybody out there listening plans on being there, don't hesitate to come over and say hi.
That's great. Well, let's talk about your family a little bit. How do you guys live sovereignly? What does that look like to you?
I think the biggest thing is, the time aspect, being able to control our time and being able to choose how we want to spend it with each other. That comes through, one, going through the ups and downs of Bitcoin since 2017, 2018 starts to give you that freedom. So it's very important. So, if you're out there, you're just starting, don't expect to kind of start now and, a year from now being able to kind of disconnect from everything. It takes time, even this amount of time later, you still have to go through that process. And so, but stay with it, stay grinding. So that's one. But then, we homeschool. So that's another way that we're able to have that control. And so being able to teach, what will be both of our daughters through that process, be involved with it. And obviously it has its difficulties, but more rewards for sure. And being able to really curate that learning to their styles, to make sure that they're on a pace that works for them. If you think about being in a classroom of, 15, 20, 30 other kids, I did it growing up. I don't know really how effective it could ever be. No fault to any teacher that's out there. Like, trying to curate your content to that many kids at once with everything else going on is really a difficult task. So it's not a shot at teachers in any way. It's more that, that curation for that individual child is a really hard thing. So kind of that time independence and being able to control, our learning for our kids is probably the two biggest reasons.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, this is a challenge that my wife and I are constantly talking about. Our kids are in public school, in French public school, so it's a little bit different. But it's, it's challenging because, we don't really want to be with our kids all the time. We do view school as a babysitting service, which holds value because I don't know that because we kind of find them a little bit annoying. But we think, the homeschool kind of idea is pretty compelling because we see a lot of value in that, right? But we've never been able to make the jump yet. So I look at families like yourself, it's quite inspirational. And I find that encouraging to hear, that people are doing that and taking control of education. Has it been challenging for you and your wife to take that on?
It definitely has challenging moments, and it just kind of really was something that I guess for lack of better words, we kind of stumbled into. We never really had some grand talk about it. I think it really just stemmed from, our daughter, she was born in 2019. So, going into the lockdown and all that stuff, working from home. So we were all together for that amount of time, was kind of step one in realizing, okay, why would we just send her away when we don't have to, and kind of grew from there. And so it's a balancing act. I think for every family, it's different. So for us, we've gone through a few different processes, but what we found works best for us, at least now, is we've kind of split up the subjects. And so I take more of the math side of things. My wife takes the language arts. And then when it comes to like science and social studies, those are more fun activities. So we're less concerned about those, especially for a 6-year-old. She's learning those sorts of things in various ways, but we focus really on the math and the language arts. And so we've devised a plan where, I'm in charge of one, she's in charge of the other. It works for each of us. And so for some other families, maybe that doesn't work. Maybe they go back and forth, or it's just one parent that's doing it. So there's lots of different ways you can go about it. There's, different options where maybe they're not at home every day. There's different, hybrid options where maybe 2 or 3 days a week they're going into a classroom type setting, and then they're home the other days, or there's today's day and age, the options depending on where you are in the world are pretty limitless.
Oh, that's great. Do you live sovereignly any other ways? I mean, obviously you're involved in Bitcoin, so there's financial sovereignty there. Do you put any emphasis on like health sovereignty with alternative health, or I don't know, food production and urban farming, or anything else that you guys are doing or that you hope to get into at some point?
Yeah, I think the health side, definitely. So we're not growing food or anything like that. No area to be able to do that living in a place like San Diego. But we definitely very much focus on the health side for ourselves and our kids. So, little to no seed oils, no scents, using scented candles and scented lotions, that sort of stuff, for ourselves or the kids. So, we're both very active. So, we start each of our days, respectively, but with exercise. So we take turns. So our both, our daughters are seeing us do that. We're waking up, dad's going to work out while mom's with the kids, and then dad comes home and mom's doing that. So being able to set an example on that side. So health and exercise would probably be the biggest thing outside of Bitcoin that we focus on. And I should probably say that probably is the more important thing, making sure you're healthy. Doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you have if you're not healthy. So health being number one, and the Bitcoin being number two when you're setting an example for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, that example is really interesting to me because I do feel like kind of the culture around health and exercise becomes so important to set that as a standard for your kids, whether it's like you actually doing it yourself and them joining in, or them seeing you do it all the time, or modeling that for them so that they can live that way as well. We live pretty active lives, but man, I just cannot. I'm just addicted to sugar, and Scott, I just struggle to model that well to my kids. I just love Fruit Loops as much as they do, and I don't know how to deal with
it. One day at a time.
Yeah, exactly. What are you excited about in Bitcoin specifically? We've got all kinds of technical arguments happening in the Bitcoin community happening right now. Conferences coming up. All these treasury companies coming online. Like when you're sitting on X and you're reading stuff, like what are you excited about?
The things, really the biggest thing that gets me excited each year is the physical talking to people, whether it's meeting someone like yourself or being, like I mentioned, we go to the big conference every year. That's, probably 3 of the most chaotic and draining days of the year, bar none. But it's just so much fun meeting new people, seeing old friends, meeting other companies in the space. So when I think about, what's exciting for me in Bitcoin, it's that. I really stay out of the technical arguments and the treasury companies and all that stuff that, if people want to dive down those pathways and we need people to be able to do it, obviously, to keep pushing forward. That's not really where my passion is. It's more on the creative side, and also being able to connect one-on-one and get to know people, and be friends, maybe friends you've never met before in person, or some that you do get to meet and that sort of thing. So that's really the biggest thing that gets me excited.
Do you are you technical? Do you understand the technical side of Bitcoin?
I don't know if I would consider myself Bitcoin techno, so I'm not a developer. But before Shamory, I spent 15 years at an ed tech startup, and so I wore a lot of hats: sales, marketing, product development. Yeah. So I understand development cycles. I can read APIs and that sort of stuff. So I have a level of technical understanding that can get by, but I wouldn't consider myself a tech expert or anything like that. But who knows where it would all lead in the future.
Okay, that's great. So let's throw some on your podcast. And for those of you who are listening who have not listened to Scott's podcast, he always throws these random questions out to his guests, usually at the beginning of the podcast, about all these kind of hypothetical situations that they might live in. And so I thought, in a spirit of revenge on behalf of all his guests, on the spot, I'm going to think of some questions and see how he can answer them. Scott, if you could live anywhere right now with your family, and that place could be a Bitcoin friendly environment, where would you live?
I would not go anywhere. So as we were talking about before, hitting record, I think it was before. So born and raised here in San Diego. This is my home. I love it here. Our extended family is here on both sides. So my wife's family, she's originally from back east, but her family moved out here right after we started dating. So we have our family here. It's where I love being. And so I actually wouldn't move anywhere. We love traveling, so love going to see new places. But the one nice thing about living in a place like this, when you're on that airplane ride home, it doesn't feel like, you're going back to some place you don't want to be. And so that's actually a pretty easy answer for me.
On the spectrum of American to not American, how American are you? And I don't even really know what that means, but it's something we say. They're really American. What does that mean to you?
Good question. I think that probably means a lot of different things to different people, depending on who you're talking to. I guess, I'm American in the sense this is where I live. This is, like I said, I don't want to go anywhere. I think there's lots of great things about living here. For my entire life, I hate politics. I do not get it. It's not my passion. I think, every angle of it, while there's a need for it in some ways, but it's just not where I am. And so some people could see that as maybe un-American if you're talking to certain people where, you
Definitely.
need that side. So I guess maybe I'm in the middle there where I, who knows, but I don't, politics especially is not something I like wasting my time with. I like focusing on things that I can control. And that's something that it's not something you can control in many ways, despite, what people want to think. There's too many powers that be and who knows where it'll all go, but, I'll focus on the good that's out there and making sure that, our family's happy.
That's great. In the world of Bitcoin, there's all these people that we suspect could have been or might be currently Satoshi. Do you think one of these people, and we don't need to be specific, but do you think we might know who Satoshi is, or do you think that actually that person has never even been identified?
Well, I mean, Satoshi is right over my shoulder here, as you know from. So, like I mentioned, our character Satoshi. So that would be number one. I'm guessing it probably is somebody whose name has been out there.
Yeah.
Which one of the names, I have no idea, but there's probably some guess that is correct, and we'll likely never know. But that would be my answer to that. But yeah, who knows?
Okay, one last question. If you could meet any historical character and hang out with them for a day, who would it be?
Well, I'm a big baseball fan, so I'd probably bring Tony Gwynn back to life. So being able to hang out with him for the day, maybe go hit some balls. Lucky enough, growing up, did get to meet him a few times. So always extremely generous with his time for kids and that sort of thing. So have gotten to meet him in the past, but never in a day in the life type perspective. So that's probably where I'd go.
Sorry, who are you talking about?
Tony Gwynn. So he was a baseball player for the Padres, arguably one of the best contact hitters who ever played baseball. And so for baseball fans out there would know who that is.
Yeah, clearly I am not a baseball fan. I've been outed.
There you go.
We live in a hockey playing country up here.
You do.
Scott, that's great. Can you just leave us with, where can we find out more about Shamory and yourself and the work that you guys are doing, including your podcast?
Yeah, of course. So everything, the website, shamory.com. So SHAMORY. So you can find all of our products there. On X, we're at PlaySHAmory. So we're on that spot. You can find us on Nostr, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, most active on X. And then if you're interested in subscribing to the show on YouTube, Apple, your podcast app of choice, Fountain, search the Bitcoin for Family show.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Scott. It's been great chatting with you and getting to know a little bit more about Shamory and your guys' story. Thanks so much for being with me here today.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.